focus. Just last week, the White House was downplaying concerns about a recession, and now they're responding with even more spending, even as a new ABC poll finds 69% of Americans think the economy is headed in the wrong direction. But Democrats and the media are still celebrating this is a win for Biden's domestic agenda.
He's getting credit for almost nothing. He's on a roll. I mean, there's no question that Joe Biden is on a roll legislatively, on the national security front, but he's getting no credit for it.
Alexandria Hoff live in Washington with the fallout. Good morning, Alexandria.
Well, good morning. As Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown put it, getting this bill passed was a fragile arrangement. All 50 members of his party had to be on board and awake and there after pulling more than an all-nighter. Here's Majority Leader Schumer.
If you ask me what helped you get this done, some people have asked me that, I'd put it in one word: persistence.
This reconciliation process required to pass the social spending bill included 16 hours of what's called a vote-a-rama and passed the tie-breaking vote by Vice President Harris. Democrats have spent more than a year in negotiations and ended up with a whittled-down version of what was once the $3 trillion-plus Build Back Better bill. This is now called the Inflation Reduction Act, and the bill includes $400 billion in spending and $700 billion in taxes. $369 billion goes toward climate provisions, and applicable corporations will be hit with a 15% minimum tax, raising an estimated $313 billion in 10 years. It also includes a heavily bolstered IRS and their enforcement. Democrats expect to add $124 billion in revenue from that. President Biden stated this: Senate Democrats sided with American families over special interests. I ran for president, promising to make government work for families again, and that is what this bill does, period. But Republicans would call that misleading, and RNC Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel stated this: Democrats will pay the price in November for raising taxes on families during a recession. Louisiana Senator John Kennedy called out the bill's key negotiator by name.
Joe-flation, as some people call it, will now refer to Joe Manchin, not President Biden. It takes a special kind of stupid, in my judgment, to raise taxes during both a recession and inflation.
And, this really does hit home here. According to the latest ABC News poll, 69%, as we saw, of Americans feel that the nation's economy is getting worse. Just 12% feel that it is getting better. This bill now heads to the House, where a majority vote is all that is needed. Ashley, Todd.
Alexandria, thank you for kicking us off this morning. With that, let us bring in Kentucky Congressman James Comer. Congressman, a lot to unpack in this bill, a lot of places that we could go. I want to start on the IRS front, because you can ask Ashley. I basically accosted her in the elevator, my hair on fire, complaining about this IRS thing. My question for you, you know a little bit more about this stuff than me. If I'm a taxpayer who plays by the rules, do I have to worry about the 87,000 new IRS agents looking for something to do that might say, let's audit Pyro?
Yes, you should worry, because with all these new IRS employees, they're going to try to prove their worth. So they're going to go after every American to try to prove their worth, to show that they did indeed bring in more revenue. And, when you look at who they're going to go after, it's very difficult and very time consuming to go after the largest income Americans and the big corporations. They're going to be going after the waiters and waitresses at the restaurant. They're going to be going after the people who are living paycheck to paycheck, because they know they don't have the attorneys to fight all the audits and all the IRS harassment. So this is more bad news for hardworking, tax-paying, average working Americans who are barely getting by.
And speaking of barely getting by, that brings me to the question of inflation. Even the Democratic Senator Chris Coons of Connecticut admitted that this bill is actually, it's going to be delayed for reducing inflation for at least a year. Take a listen.
How long is it going to take to reduce inflation?
It may take a year or more. We've seen gas prices come down week after week after week for the last 5 weeks in a row. Gas in Delaware is now below $4. Yes, inflation is higher than it should be.
And I do want to correct that. Coons is actually from Delaware. But getting to the point, what does this mean for Americans? Because you see this huge package, this dollar amount that is astronomical. And here we are hurting at the pump, at the grocery store, just trying to put food on the table. But yet we're going to be funding the IRS.
Well, this is another example of the Democrats being tone deaf. The Democrats are banking their whole political future this fall on the hope that America is financially illiterate. I don't think they are. I think most Americans realize that if the government spends more money and spends more money recklessly and unnecessarily, then that's going to lead to more inflation. So the sheer nature of the bill, by its name, Inflation Reduction, is being untruthful to the American people. And I think the American people get it. The government cannot continue to spend money and waste money and expect for inflation to go down. The reverse is going to happen, and this is a very bad bill for the working Americans.
Let's pop up on the screen the various aspects of this, breaking it down into three key categories. Remember the total, $739 billion. That includes $369 billion. It's called energy security and climate change. Basically, that means stimulus package for rich people so they can get a Tesla. $313 billion, 15% corporate minimum tax. That's basically going to cut jobs because those companies are going to have to find the revenue somewhere. And the $124 billion IRS tax enforcement that we already mentioned. There's talk on the Democrat side that this is good for seniors. Senator Rick Scott said this is going to be a war on seniors. Explain why you think Senator Scott is right.
Well, he's right, because the Democrats are not going to give up on this Green New Deal. This Green New Deal is not working. The only reason gas prices have gone down is because it's basically supply and demand. The economy is hurting so bad. We're in a recession, regardless of whether or not the Democrats change the definition of a recession. The real wages go down every day when inflation goes up. So this is a burden on all Americans, on seniors living on fixed income. This is a burden on working Americans. This is a burden on the next generation of Americans who are going to be graduating from college and entering the workforce. This is a bad bill, and it's just very disappointing that the Democrats would continue to shove something like this through on a partisan basis. Remember, not a single Republican voted for this in the Senate, and I'm pretty confident not a single Republican will vote for it in the House later this week.
Yeah, and we'll see that come to a head here in just a few days, potentially. Now, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy is saying the chamber's investigation into Hunter Biden will include a probe of U.S. intelligence agencies. I want to read this quote from Leader McCarthy. It says the House probe of Hunter Biden will expand to U.S. intelligence agencies and chiefs who were almost certainly aware of his shady foreign activities while his father was vice president. They should come in and talk to us. You'd want to ask these individuals, what did they know and when? So even if they do come in and sit down, what can we expect from them to say about this?
Well, we have a lot of questions. I mean, the things that we've been looking into on the House Oversight Committee revolve around Hunter Biden's 150 suspicious activity reports. These were issued by banks. And remember, this is the bank notifying the federal government that we're pretty certain our client is committing criminal activities. These were committed when Joe Biden was vice president. So the intelligence community had to know that Hunter Biden was doing things that were so bad that at least 5 banks notified the federal government of criminal wrongdoing. So we want to know why the intelligence community issued that statement. Who led the letter? Was this someone in the intelligence community, or was this someone in the Biden campaign? Because with respect to the intelligence community, at best incompetence or worse, a cover-up. Either way, it's unacceptable. And Republicans, when we retake the majority in January, we're going to find out who's at fault and try to hold someone accountable.
To that last point, Congressman, how much trouble could those intel chiefs be in?
Well, I hope they're in a lot of trouble. What we need to do is figure out what happened. If there was a loophole that allows them to get by with this by pleading ignorance, then we need to change the law, because this intelligence community has had a run for over a decade. Remember, there were intelligence leaders telling me, anyway, in Congress, that they felt like the Afghan government would fight back. Then they felt like the Ukrainian government would flee like the Afghans did. So the intelligence community has been making mistakes dating all the way back to Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. But here, with what's happened in Afghanistan, with what's happened in Ukraine, they were totally wrong on it. And now with Hunter Biden, we know, and more information is coming in every day, said that this guy was a crook. He's been influence peddling all over the world, but yet the intelligence community, right before an election, issues a statement saying, no, this is Russian disinformation. This is another bad hit, along with things like the Russian dossier, the Steele dossier, another bad hit on our intelligence community, and we need to make some changes in the intelligence community, and hopefully Republicans will do that when we retake the majority.
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. We'll see. Congressman James Comer unpacking a lot for us, a lot of important issues on this Monday morning. Thanks for being with us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
The left's reluctance to back President Biden in 2024 on full display on the Sunday morning talk shows. Delaware Senator Chris Coons, one of the president's top allies, dodging whether he'd recommend that Biden top the Democratic ticket again.
I'm hopeful that President Biden will run again. If he does, I'll certainly support him.
So no doubt, are you encouraging him to run again?
I'm encouraging him to focus on what's right in front of us.
Connecticut Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal also sidestepping a question on Biden's potential re-election bid.
My focus is totally on this November, partly because I am running for re-election, but also I think this November is going to determine how successful President Biden is in the next 2 years and how strong he would be as a candidate.
But despite the non-answers from lawmakers, Georgia gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams is vowing to absolutely support President Biden if he runs for a second term.
And the liberal media also advising Biden to quit while he's ahead after the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act. A New York Times op-ed by Maureen Dowd bluntly telling President Biden, quote, "Hey, Joe, don't give it a go." She writes, quote, "Ruth Bader Ginsburg is a cautionary tale. She missed the moment to leave the stage. This is something Joe Biden should keep in mind as he is riding the crest of success. It should give him the confidence to leave secure in the knowledge that he has made his mark." Dowd praised Biden for being an escape from Trump, but she also argues his team got carried away, quote, casting him as an FDR with a grand vision to remake the social contract. Here's Jason Chaffetz on why he thinks Democrats are avoiding the 2024 question.
Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are an albatross to the Democrats winning elections. Very few want to be in their presence because members of Congress, they actually want to win their elections. The bigger problem for the Democrats is their solutions for our country are not what are going to solve the problems we face. Since the Democrats have lurched left towards socialism, they regularly divide America constantly by relying on racism, sexism, and statism. Diversity in government can be good and important for community engagement and confidence, but when they become the overriding theme rather than competence, it taints the talented, punishes the accomplished, and discredits the appointed, all for the sake of diversity.
And I want to point out one part that really stood out to me in that piece that he did. He said the problem for Democrats is their solution for our country are not what are going to solve the problems that we face. I also think that voters, especially Democratic voters, kind of don't know where to go right now, because if you are a true Democrat, you're looking at how progressive the Democratic Party has gotten, and they think, well, I can't vote Republican, maybe I should vote independent. So I think that is a big problem, and he's right. There's no solution for the problems we face, like inflation. And I know I harp on this all the time, but the gas prices and just trying to feed your family, having to go out and get another job just to put food on the table for your family. I think they're very out of touch. I do want to also bring up the White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, last week talking to Peter Doocy. She was talking about how the gas prices went down 30 cents. It's nothing to brag about when gas prices shot up $3. And she was saying, well, the firefighters and the nurses, they appreciate not the leniency, but the comfort that it gives them that they're saving some money. They're just totally out of touch, and it's not helping anyone, Democrats, Republicans, and I really do think that this is going to affect the Democrats at the polls. You're going to see it come to a head, this red wave.
On the diversity point, Republicans actually have a really good story to tell, because if you look at so many races around the country, Black and Latino Republicans are running, and they're running in huge numbers. And they're basically appealing to the Democrats, which typically are viewed as the bloc in which Blacks and Latinos vote, basically saying, hey, you didn't get anything from the Democrats, come Republican. We're going to have a gentleman gentleman coming on in the 5 o'clock hour, a black Republican from Connecticut. That doesn't happen a lot. It's going to be interesting to see if that story plays out in other areas throughout the country. What I think Republicans need to do, they need to tie Biden and Harris to this economy, to every single Democrat that is running. They can't let Democrats distract the populace on abortion, because abortion, if you look at the numbers, it's not polling great for Republicans. Republicans need to be laser focused, saying if you are a Democrat, you are an acolyte of Biden and Harris, and as a result, you should not win in November because you are tied to that. You're responsible for dragging down the economy. If Republicans don't do that, they could be in trouble. I know we always predict, hey, Republicans have this thing in the bag. They have to be laser focused on that going forward.
Yep, I totally agree.
With that, 16 minutes after the hour, New York Mayor Eric Adams lashing out after a second bus of illegal immigrants arrives in his city. But wait until you hear how Texas Governor Greg Abbott is responding. Plus,
by ramping up clean energy technologies, we'll bolster our energy security and improve the affordability and reliability of energy.
But the answer ultimately meaning
bill by more than $1,000 a month. The Los Angeles Times is urging President Biden to declare a national climate emergency. The paper's editorial board claims the so-called Inflation Reduction Act's $360 billion climate budget isn't enough, writing, quote, signing it into law will only get us part of the way to Biden's goal of slashing U.S. greenhouse gas emissions in half by 2030. Unlike Trump's misuse of that authority for his wall, there's actually a legitimate legal basis for calling climate change a national emergency. The board goes on to complain that Biden has not imposed enough regulations to force the country to transition to cleaner sources of energy. Todd?
So bankrupt the country is what they're aiming for. America's small business struggling to pay their electric bills while the administration continues its green energy push. One Arkansas business owner says he spent over $1,000 just last month just to keep the lights on. Owner of The Dugout, David Oliver, joins me now. David, great to have you here. We mentioned that $1,000 number. How does that compare to last year this time?
Man, last year was about $1,500. So it basically more than doubled this year. It's at $3,700.
Wow.
So you look at about $2,200. I mean, a $2,200 difference.
Are you charging $2,200 more for your food items, or are you eating that cost?
We're having to eat that cost right now, but we're going to try to, figure it out.
Unbelievable. Here's the president talking about praising green energy. Listen.
we're going to invest $369 billion to address the climate crisis and bring down family energy bills by an average of $500 a year.
Ramping up clean energy technologies will bolster our energy security and improve the affordability and reliability of energy.
But the answer ultimately meaning the next 3 or 4 years, is investing in renewable energy.
As someone who's trying to provide the great people of Arkansas with a great meal at a good price, what's your reaction when you hear that?
That's hard to believe. 3 to 4 years, small businesses will be out of business. I mean, we don't have 3 to 4 years.
Let's look at some numbers, David. National electricity price averages spiking, residential prices increasing over $1 per kilowatt hour, commercial prices up almost $2. That reflects what you're going through. Do you blame Biden and the Democrats' green energy policies for that?
Yes, sir, I do.
Why do you think that they're doing this?
They're trying to push us to the Green New Deal. They're trying to, push coal and just oil smooth out.
When you talk to your customers, what do they say about this?
They're upset with it. I mean, we can sit around and talk to a few different customers about their electric bill. And, it's like you was talking about residential, their electric bills are going up $400 or $500 at their house. So you take a customer or an individual family that's on a budget, and let's just throw some numbers out there. Let's just say $1,000. So they budget $1,000 a month to have to go out and do things on. Well, you kick in an extra $400 on an electric bill, and you just lost. Now you're down to $600. They can't even take their family out to a movie, then go to a nice meal, and then go back home hardly, 4 times a month.
Biden says this will bring down energy bills by $500 per year. You buy that?
No, sir.
I don't understand how he can say that. It's an out-and-out lie, it appears. How does it feel to have the burden on your shoulders, David, when folks in China and India pollute as much as they want? And review here, we're all one planet. So whatever they do is going to offset whatever we do.
That's a fact, sir. We have a Turk plant here it's a coal fire plant here in Fulton, Arkansas, which is about 20 miles from us. Man, they operate cleaner than any place in the world. And, I mean, it's crazy.
When the folks in D.C. have this discussion, they don't talk to folks like David Oliver, unfortunately. Otherwise, they'd see how this is impacting real people in real states like Arkansas.
Yes, sir.
David Oliver, thanks for getting up with us. We appreciate it.
Hey, thank you, sir.
Okay. A team of thieves scoring.
Mexico are trying to track down a Volkswagen that may be linked to a possible serial killer. Investigators looking into the murders of 4 Muslim men in Albuquerque say the vehicle of interest was spotted near one or more of the crime scenes. 3 victims from Pakistan were found at separate scenes within the last 2 weeks. The first killing of a man from Afghanistan happened in November. Police say the victims were likely targeted. The motive is still unclear. Mayor Eric Adams is furious with Texas Governor Greg Abbott after a second bus of illegal immigrants arrives in New York City.
Meantime, Abbott promising to send thousands more as the Biden administration fails to secure the southern border. Marianne Rafferty live with the story. Marianne.
Good morning, Todd and Ashley. Well, a second bus of illegal immigrants has arrived in New York, and Mayor Eric Adams is lashing out at Texas Governor Greg Abbott for sending them.
This is horrific when you think about what the governor is doing, the governor of Texas, after a month of traveling across the border, placing on the bus with no direction to come here to New York.
And while Texas deals with thousands of illegal crossings daily, Mayor Adams is asking for federal help to deal with a small. Abbott used innocent people as political pawns to manufacture a crisis. We need the federal government's help, money, technical assistance, and more. Mayor Adams also blaming the exploding crime in his own city for the reason some migrants are choosing not to come, saying, quote, "We were led to believe about 40 people should have been on that bus. Only 14 got off because of the fear that something was going to happen to them if they came to this location. People got off earlier." Meanwhile, Governor Abbott planning to send more buses of migrants north until border security measures that were working before are put back in place.
Building the wall, Man in Mexico policy, the Title 42 policy, as well as ending catch and release. Biden eliminated all of those things, and now we have chaos. That has caused Texas to have to step up and take unprecedented action.
And on Friday, the Pentagon denied a request by D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser to use the National Guard to help with the influx of migrants being bused to that city. Back to you guys.
All right, Marianne Rafferty live for us this morning. Marianne, thank you. Stephen Miller says the Biden administration will go down in history for the humanitarian crisis they've overseen at our border.
We are in the midst of the greatest national security crisis and greatest humanitarian crisis that we have ever seen. There is a border that is completely controlled by foreign criminal cartels. Any weapons they want in, any drugs they want in, any gang members they want in, they're bringing them in. The Biden administration's decision to terminate President Trump's hugely successful border controls is a crime against humanity. This administration deserves to lose not only a record number of seats in the House and the Senate over this border crisis, but the eternal shame of history. For what they have done has no precedent. It is an abomination.
And even before we saw buses arrive in New York City, we saw midnight migrant flights arrive in the Westchester suburbs. Former Westchester County Executive Rob Astorino was the official who sounded the alarm over the secret flights. We're going to be talking to him next hour. Ashley.
Jose Alba, the New York City bodega worker who defended himself from a behind-the-counter attack earlier this summer, is reportedly fearing for his life and even looking to leave the violent city now that murder charges against him are finally dropped. Frank Marte, the head of a bodega association assisting Jose Alba, joins me now. Frank, thanks for being with us this morning. So you actually had a meeting with DA Alvin Bragg, and you said that it kind of went sour because of a question you asked. You asked him point blank why he doesn't want to prosecute criminals. What was his response to you?
Yes. Well, when I asked if they're going to commit me to arrest, to put charge on the criminals, they didn't give me the answer. They didn't commit the. And until we don't do that, we're going to have the wave of crimes every day, because there's no way that you cannot punish the criminals and they will feel like they can do anything, and they're going to get away. There's going to be no consequence. So that's going to be, that is already something that's out of control. So we have so much violence all around that is very hard for us to control the situation if we don't have any help from the DA.
So when it comes to Alba's story, you said that he is considering leaving New York City because he's scared for his life. Is that because he's scared for his life that if he goes back to work that he's going to be attacked again, or that the city is not going to back him up, or maybe both?
Yes, well, that will be a very dangerous situation for him to go back to work in the place where he has the incident. We will not allow him to go back in the situation and the violence that he is, so to put his life at risk again.
And then when it comes to these bail reform laws and the criminals basically being arrested and released, just putting more crime back on the streets with essentially no repercussions, Mayor Eric Adams has said, and he has asked people as like Kathy Hochul to do something about these bail reform laws. She said she's not going to do anything until at least January. She's not even going to touch it. Is Eric Adams just merely asking for them to do something about the crime in the streets enough, or do you think there needs to be more done from the mayor's standpoint?
Well, first, I believe that the Mayor Adams, he should have some help from the Governor Hochul and the leaders of the assembly, like Carl Hastings, Cousin, and a lot of officials-elect that they are not help. If we don't reform, if we don't fix that bail reform, this is gonna be horrible. I mean, the crime will keep rising every day. We need to fix the bail reform. That was the first thing that we create the wave of crime. Because the bail reform is like we are cleaning up the jails with the criminals and bringing in the hardworking people. That's how we're seeing, because every day you see criminals, and when somebody like Jose Alba get in trouble defending himself, then it's very difficult for him to get out.
Right, and they sent him to Rikers, and anyone who is familiar with Rikers, that's where the worst of the worst criminals go, and he was there for about a week for merely defending himself. So obviously they dropped those charges, but is that enough? Because obviously he's going to have flashbacks to that incident. Probably things that went on in Rikers as well. Is the city doing anything to help him recuperate, whether it be financially or anything to that matter? Or do they just kind of, wash their hands of it, be like, the charges are dropped, that's good enough for you?
Exactly, that's what they did. Drop the charge, and that's enough. They hasn't done anything else for him. Even they brought him to Rikers Island, and they didn't take care of medical. They didn't give him any medical assistance. So when he came from there, his wound was getting infected, and he just was clean.